Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, Highroad to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. And I'm here today with Charley Castex. He's been with us before. And welcome back to the show, Charley.
Hey, thanks, Nancy. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you. We're going to talk about spiritual empowerment today. And this is going to be a really fun conversation. So share the show with your friends. We're going to try to get some information out there to help y'all, raise our vibration and ascend as we progress here, as humanity progresses. Hey, listen, before we start our conversation with Charley, I pulled this off of the internet a few minutes ago. That shooting that happened in Michigan, there's a follow-up, and I just wanted to read this. The parents of the Michigan high school shooting suspect are charged with involuntary manslaughter in connection with the rampage. The parents of the 15-year-old charged in this week's deadly shooting at Michigan's Oxford High School have been charged with 4 counts each of homicide, involuntary manslaughter. The charges against James and Jennifer Crumbly were filed Friday morning in 52nd District Court in Rochester Hills. This is really close to home. This is where I grew up, you guys. And my kids both live in this area, so it just gives me chills. It is rare for parents to be charged like this. CNN senior legal analyst Eli Honig said, what the prosecutor is saying is, let's look at the parents' responsibility, Honig said. This is really a new frontier. James Crumbly bought the gun 4 days before it was used in the shooting, prosecutor Karen McDonald said Friday at a news conference. Today is Friday. Sophomore Ethan Crumbly was with him and later posted on social media about the gun. Jennifer Crumbly also posted about the gun on social media, calling it his new Christmas present. McDonald said it's been a devastating week for us, and there are other individuals who contributed, and it's my intention to hold them accountable as well. Prosecutors will try to show that Ethan Crumbly's parents were criminally negligent and contributed to or caused a dangerous situation. And I'm going to agree with this one. You don't buy a 15-year-old a 9mm. I'm from Michigan originally, Ohio and Michigan. A lot of us, there's a lot of hunters. A lot of deer hunters. I could see maybe if they got them a shotgun to go deer hunting, but not a 9mm. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the parents need to take responsibility for these kids. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Charley, I know you don't really want to get into the whole situation, but I just really feel that humanity needs to know, and people need to be responsible. You got to take responsibility for your kids until they're 18 years old. That's pretty much how it goes. So there you have it. That's my opinion on that. And God bless the people in Michigan and all of the families that have been affected. And my kids' families have been affected by this too. Even my 7-year-old grandson's school was shut down because of all of this. So it's just been unbelievable to happen and it's a rural community. I just want to say that, which surprises me. This isn't like downtown. This is rural. So it's just a sad situation. Anyway, I'm glad Charley's here. And Charley sent me all these really cool talking points today. And the first thing he says is there is no self-realization without self-regulation. What does that mean, Charley?
Great. Well, first of all, thanks again, Nancy, for having me here.
Of course.
It's great to be able to get into it together and share the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no self-realization without self-regulation. What does that mean? Well, perfect question, because self-regulation, I think of as the artful management of thoughts and emotions.
Okay.
That's a nice broad stroke way to think of it. So you have to think of it like in terms of that definition, we're the curators of our consciousness. We're responsible for those thoughts and emotions. Okay. So essentially sanity is square one on the spiritual path.
Okay.
Which is super important because people will often kind of jump right beyond that. And in other words, like they're trying to go from sanity to some great supernatural state. So when I'm saying that, the suggestion is that you can't substitute crazy for clarity. Okay. Clarity is
Yeah.
non-negotiable. So there's certain brainwave states that are conducive to the states of spiritual expansion. And there's certain biochemical states that are conducive to the state of expansion and bliss states. And obviously in dissonant states of chronic stress in particular, it's like we're a dead battery. If we think of ourselves as human beings, we're an electromagnetic construction,
Right.
and we have an electromagnetic field that surrounds us.
Mm-hmm.
That electrical field is informed and stimulated by our thoughts, and the magnetic portion of that field is stimulated and informed by the feelings. So if we're having a lot of stress, then basically the signal strength of that electromagnetic field becomes very weak. So if we're able to get in a state of coherence and empowerment, and we move into more bliss and more ease and nervous system laxity, then we become this bastion or this basic carrier for clarity. And it's more like being a Wi-Fi hotspot rather than the dead battery. So self-regulation suggests that there's responsibility in getting ourselves into a state of being righted within ourselves, mentally and emotionally. And then from there, we can have a launch pad for transcendence.
Well, this really hits home with me a lot.
Mhm.
And because, it's easier said than done.
Sure.
We have things happen to us in our lives. We have people who betray us or people who, do things, and we try to let it go. But a lot of times the anger or the frustration of a situation stays in the body.
Right.
And
right.
it's not that easy, and I can speak for myself, to release this sometimes. I mean, and a lot of times I say fake it until you can do it,
Right.
and I do the Ho'oponopono thing lately. But it's hard.
Nice.
I mean, when
Nice.
when someone wrongs you and you've got that negativity in your body, I mean, it's tough to release it. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think we need to set something against, like, for instance, with resentment,
Mhm.
it often comes with remorse and regret on either side. It's kind of like, a triple decker. So you have the 3 R's of resentment, remorse, and regret. And I like to set against that, just as a kind of mnemonic device, as like to remember it, the 3 G's, which is the consideration of a greatest good, and gratitude, and grace. So we have
Okay.
to set something against all of that emotionality. There's different models for that. Just because it's not easy doesn't mean it's not possible, though. I find that a lot of times people, and I know, again, it's challenging for sure. But if you come out, for instance, the other side of an experience of resentment, which I was kind of foisted into an experience of that in recent times. And when I came out the other side of it, I realized, wow, I actually feel grateful for this. And that's bizarre and uncommon, because how many people say that? Now, the reason I was so grateful was because I realized, how else would I have learned? How else would I have gained the ability to be able to release the resentment and to recognize that there's this, again, responsibility within myself to decide how I want to be. So this gets to the kind of next level of self-regulation, which is not just getting balanced, but if you are the curator of your consciousness, then you decide, speaking of empowerment, who you're going to be and how you're going to be. So that state of being is very self-created. And so if we have the emotion, the best thing to do is to work through the emotion and have it in real time, first of all, like a child, and be able to let it run through you and course through you. And then the question is, do you keep looping it?
Well, yeah, that's the problem I've run into. And of course I've had a betrayal. And so even though it's been like a year and I've been betrayed, and I've tried to figure it out, it's still there. And you talk about the looping, because you think you're good and then something happens and then it brings it up again. So talk about this, because I'm not the only one. So,
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the betrayal is, it's a difficult emotion, and obviously resentment. It all comes as a really
And anger too. Let me throw that in there
anger.
too.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, a good starting place, because we always need a starting place, like
Yeah.
really a good foundation, is to recognize, first of all, these thoughts and feelings that we have. Okay. They're not who you are, they're how you are.
I like that.
Really, really important, because what happens is we cleave to the emotion and we become so identified with it. For instance, if you, just like that, if you think, oh, I have been betrayed, then there's an aspect of your psyche that logs onto that as a sense of character. You're identified with being, betrayed or victimized, right?
Yeah, right.
So we have, as one of the points that I think we were going to cover today, were these spiritual jump starts that I share. The second one, I'll just leap ahead because it's so relevant, is to don't analyze in the midst of disturbing emotions or experiences.
And that's true, because I analyze everything.
It's a great tool, but it's the wrong tool for the job.
Gotcha.
So emotion is you could think of it as electrical energy, or energy that needs to move, So it needs to have motion. Okay. So what happens is, instead of giving it motion, oftentimes people romance or nurse these gnarly feelings, like these heavy weighted feelings. They nurse them, they become identified with them. And a lot of that has to do with, again, just kind of like, it's like, okay, I don't want to feel this way, but I'm going to obsess about it. And as soon as you do, it's like intending to take the vacuum cleaner out and clean the carpet. But before you do, you're pouring dirt and dust all over it and like grinding it into the carpet.
Yeah.
So the idea is to not rake it over the coals analytically. So when I say the wrong tool for the job, it's because analysis works great when you're in a state of coherence with your brain and heart, when you're in a balanced state spiritually, emotionally, mentally. When spirit, mind, and body are synced, and you're in a non-defensive, expansive state, then you can think about logically what the cause and effect chain is all about, and what part you played and all that stuff. But while you're experiencing that emotion, it's best to find a way to move it out of the musculature, to get active.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And right. And to recognize that it's good to square off with all of that residue about it, but after you're not frothing. When you're frothing, I suggest trying to redirect yourself after you move through the initial emotions consistently towards the present moment and the future, because the answer isn't in the rearview mirror. The answer is in how you feel about it now. And you'll notice as time moves on, chances are, I don't want to set this up.
We got to go to commercial break, but I want you to finish this point.
Okay. Well, chances are that you're going to realize that it had everything to do with them and not much to do with you.
Yeah. And we carry it. We'll talk more about this when we come back. You guys, I'm here today with Charley Castex. He's joining me actually from Asheville, North Carolina. This is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity, and we'll be right back. This is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity. I'm here today with Charley Castex, and we're talking about life, and we're talking about holding on to emotions, because I wrote a book about energy. I know about energy. It's interesting because I know all this stuff, but when it comes down to it, it's really, it's easier. Like I said before, it's easier said than done. And I know that when you hold these emotions in, that it causes disease in the body. It just does, because things don't flow properly. And so we have to release. And it is hard to release the anger and turn it into love and switch it up. I mean, and again, what I was saying before is, I think the biggest thing is, you think you're good, you think you got it all set, and then something triggers it, and then you're back. You know what I mean? And I think that's that. And I know time heals all. It really does. Time and love actually heal all. But what do you suggest? Like, when you get that thought back in your head, I mean, do we just come up with a thought? I had a lady on my show, I was going to ask you this, and she said, change the outcome. Like, before you go to sleep, she said, make it up in your mind that it happened differently. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that can work in some sense, especially in terms of the subconscious not having to chew on resentment or regret or anger all
Mm-hmm.
night long. That might
Mm-hmm.
be a good cue for the subconscious. But I think in our conscious waking state,
It doesn't
we have to,
help.
yeah, we have to parse it out a little differently,
Yeah.
because there's so much gravity and in emotion and identification with it. So you said the magic words. The emotions are not the causal effect of this whole situation. In other words, the thoughts are the causal feature to the effect of emotion. So the
No.
emotion doesn't come out of like nowhere. And yes, it's become somaticized and it lives in the body. But before that, it's usually this aspect of picking at the scab that I think we have the most agency over. Which is to say, when that thought comes up, square off with the thought. Now you have to meet that thought at a higher frequency of energy than the emotion of that thought.
Okay.
This is really important. Like, so if you have somebody that you're in a tussle with and they're
Mhm.
angry and you meet them with anger, how's that going to work?
It's
Right?
not
It just
right.
becomes an energetic pissing contest.
Right.
So if you meet them with, say, compassion, or you're listening, or you're more receptive and less identified with being, a victim, let's say, then there's some purchase, again, more agency over your state of consciousness. So as the thought arises of like, hey, this is what happened, I don't think we need to analyze the emotion because it is the wrong tool for the job. The emotion is already there. It needs to be felt and worked through. And analyzing it is actually just deflecting it up into your head. So it'd be like me as a therapist saying, Nancy, how do you feel about that? And your eyes would go up to the right corner and you go, and I'd say, no, 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 don't think about it. And you'd be like, what? And I'd say, yeah, how do you feel about it? And you wouldn't want to answer because it's a feeling. You'd have to think about it first. So when those thoughts come up, I suggest meeting it head on. And in other words, not being reactive towards the thought is the
Okay.
first thing. And
Okay.
that's the first thing. The second aspect is, do you want revenge? Do you want to make it, you want to change the outcome? You want to do this, you want to do that? Well, it's what happened is inevitable. What you need to do is make peace with the past and move on.
Mhm.
In other words, there's no way to alter that outcome in actuality, but you can
Mhm.
change the way you feel about it. I suggest asking yourself, like, if you square off with that emotion or that thought that also carries the emotional fragrance with it, that kind of feeling with it, you say to yourself, okay, I'm paying attention to it. I'm
Mhm.
paying attention to it. What's its statement? What's its vibe? What is it telling me? And then after you've heard the whole story once, this is a good rule of thumb too. If somebody's complaining or giving you like the litany of all their issues,
I
if you're
know, right?
and you should listen completely once. Okay. And then
Mhm.
after that once, you say, okay, so how can I help? And they go, no, no, no. When he said, and you go, no, how can I help? And they're, no, no, when she said, and you notice this is the nature of the
Yeah.
mind. You
Yeah.
want to keep redoing it until someone gets it in the kidneys, until someone, gets it.
Uh-huh.
So we short circuit that when you say, okay, what is the statement? And you're feeling it all the way through and you're paying attention to what that thought is telling you. If you don't romance it, if you don't get in there and start working with it, you can feel a state of neutrality, at least be in the moment, and you can go, okay, this is kind of the sense of what I'm getting from that thought and that feeling. Okay. There's that information. And that's super helpful. Now you can ask yourself, what did I learn? How do I alchemically transform the woe into wisdom?
I like that.
Or the wound into wisdom. Yeah, me too. Because see, if
Mhm.
you want the wisdom, you're going to think, you're going to actualize all of your intellect towards that channel. You're going to say, I want the wisdom, I want the experience, and I want the juice, not the peel. So you're going to go in that direction. But if you want the wounding, or if you're like, hey, somebody needs to pay for this,
Yeah,
this is
because a lot
never
of
going to
us do
happen.
that. Yeah.
Retribution. Yeah, retribution will put you in an emotional state where it can't be worked out because you don't want to work it out.
Yeah.
You want to just, if somebody really wants to just roast and marinate or have a spiritual hissy fit, then that's what you're going to get. So always ask yourself what you want. Otherwise, it could be, okay, I feel wounded, but if I guarantee if you feel it as 100%, if you feel it as completely as possible, then you won't have headroom left over to intellectualize it because you just cried your eyes out and you just felt all this catharsis. And yes, the thought will probably come back, but when it comes back, it'll have less voltage. So here's what I like to say too.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me understand this.
Yeah,
So
sure.
when you feel the emotion and whatever, you let go, you cry or whatever, the hurt, the pain, whatever, you let that go. You're saying as time goes on and the emotion comes back, it lessens because you've moved through the emotion. Is that what you're saying?
That's part of it, is you've moved through the emotion. In other words, you let the pressure out of the pipes. That's
Okay.
square one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The other way to think of it, Nancy, is like, that's a dragon. Okay. And most people feel like they have to slay the dragon. I don't think you always have to slay a dragon. Occasionally you have to slay a dragon. Typically, we just have to stare the dragon down. You have to say, who are you and what do you want? You have to mean business and go, what do you want with me? Now, not like defensively, okay?
Right.
But when you stare it down, what you're doing is you're facing the fear and you're paying attention. Again, not trying to figure it out, but you're just paying attention. What is in front of me? What is this thought really saying to me? What is this emotion really delivering? And at least you're paying attention to the content. Okay. Now, once you do that, if you stare into the situation fully enough, you're going to recognize there's an illusory aspect to it. Okay. In other words, if nothing else, you're going to realize that the illusion is that that's not happening in this moment. And that's a past wound.
The past thing. Yeah.
Right. If you get that much, then what I'd like to say, what I was going to say a minute ago, is that if you deny the validity of an illusion, you pull the charge out of it. So think about that. If you recognize the illusion and you say, that's bogus, and you really recognize that that's not real, that's not authentic, like somebody's trying to sell you a bill of goods with that, then you pull the charge out of it because you're not believing an illusion. And if you don't believe an illusion, you're not going to wrestle with it. You're not going to get in bed with it.
Right.
You have to recognize it as an illusion, because there's a part of when we're wounded like that and we keep raking it over the coals, there's a part of us that typically, at least on an unconscious level, and this is somewhat of a psychoanalytic pondering.
That's okay.
But hey, yeah, we love to go free range, right?
Yeah.
Is there some part of us that often wants to self-abuse?
Okay.
And I don't believe we can champion and self-abuse ourselves simultaneously. You can't. So you have to decide, like, I think of it this way, like, you're the most precious commodity in the world. You have just yourself. Are you going to treat yourself gently and lovingly about this? Or do you feel like on some unconscious level, you need a thrashing? Like, you have to hurt through this. You don't have to suffer it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, even though, things happen in life and things happen to everybody. And,
Sure.
Even though it may not be your fault, a lot of people will take that on and say, well, what did I do? Or how did I even get myself into this situation? Or I should have known better, or I'm smarter than that, or how come I didn't see it? You know what I mean?
Right,
and those are the things that really come up on these kind of situations. You start to blame yourself. You're like, well, wait a minute, how come I didn't know that? Or how come I didn't see it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Can-
And so I think go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's such a juicy topic. So that brings us actually to the first. I mentioned the second spiritual jumpstart. The first one is to back off your critical judgments. Okay, so we're kind of working in reverse engineering this aspect of these spiritual jumpstarts that I share with people around the world. And so when I say backing off your critical judgments, doesn't that feel good? Just even like the prospect of that?
Well, let's talk about it when we come back from commercial break.
Okay.
Because I'm excited about this conversation, and hopefully we can help some people out there. And it's helping me too, Charlie. So thank you. I'm here today with Charley Castex. Charlie, tell everybody how to get in touch with you real quick.
Sure. My website's the easiest way. It's charleycastex.com.
All right. This is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity, and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity. I'm here today with Charley Castex, and we're just having a great conversation. Charlie, continue on.
Great. Well, we were talking about, and it's such a a fantastic paradigm of transformation that we're talking about, Nancy, because we're looking into this aspect of backing off your critical judgments.
Mhm.
And that's what I consider the first spiritual jumpstart in some of the recent models that I've been sharing with people. So what does that mean? So backing off your critical judgments. Think of it this way, like it's really obvious if you think to yourself, you can't train a dog by kicking it.
True.
Okay, right? Because that's basically what happens when people are trying to champion themselves but self-abuse simultaneously. So you can't train a dog by kicking it means if we have to back off the critical judgments in order to get somewhere. The judgments are almost always in the way. So what I mean by that is, particularly in this sense, is like, for instance, the word karma.
Mhm.
We tend to think of it as an elaborate system of reward and punishment.
Right.
And I think that's the tip of the iceberg. That's the visible part. But the word actually etymologically goes back to Sanskrit. So in Sanskrit, it means action. It just means action. It doesn't mean tit for tat. It just means action. Okay. So the actions that we perform are basically like bricks in a wall. There's one action, another action, they stack up.
Okay.
And in time, that structure either becomes a shelter or it becomes a prison. Okay, so now there's that part. Now here's the kicker. Makes sense. Whatever you do, there's a result, a consequence to your actions. What people fail to realize a lot of times is that through these actions, through that karma, the karma is the brick. Okay, what you do and don't do is the brick. But the judgments you have about it are the mortar that's stronger than that brick. You see? So the judgment is what bonds the action. It's like, it's not always in the action that the karma exists, it's in the intention. So this is a really important point. And I was talking earlier with you about denying the validity of an illusion pulls the charge out of it. I think it's just kind of a poetic way of saying, well, if you look square off with an illusion and you call it for what it is, which is make believe, then it no longer has power over you. So
we create these things in our minds, don't we? I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm thinking,
sure,
we create these little stories, in our head.
Mhm.
And so what you're saying, I just want to understand this so the audience understands too. So when you get that story in your head, you're like, wait a minute, you don't even know if that's how it went. You're thinking maybe that's how it went, but it's an illusion. And you're saying, take the power away from that illusion and move forward is what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Especially like analysis is not required. It's just a matter of deciding whether you want to move on and you want to be in a finer, freer state of being, or do you want to be enslaved to all those thoughts? So oftentimes our psychological process becomes this prison that we live within. Wouldn't it be nice to have some distance from that?
Yes.
And that is the whole point of quieting, the whole point of meditation. There's a reason that particular technique of internalizing or interiorizing our focus has been super popular in the main methodology for awakening for over 5,000 years. Because once we have some distance from the drama and then we mellow the drama out, we can see things as they are. So it's important to ask yourself what you want. Do you want to have an intellectual understanding of what happened, or do you want to be able to release it, as you said earlier? Do you want to be able to reconciling it? So you can always make peace with something, even if that thing has not made peace with you.
Yeah. Not easy though. I will say that it's not easy. I think the reason it's not easy, I can only speak for myself, is that there is that underlying anger and that underlying, you want to, especially when you've been betrayed or done wrong or whatever, you want to see justice. I think that's what it is more than anything, for me anyway. You want to see justice, and that comes with karma. And so, but you may never see that.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I think
And
that's the hang up right there, Charlie. You know what I mean?
it
You know
is.
what
You
I'm
got it. You
saying?
got it. I think it really is. I think it's the primary hang up
It
anyway.
really
There's
is.
other
It's
ones, but
like,
that tends to be the one that draws everybody in. It's like you have to be right, or you have to have retribution, or you have to have
well,
justice.
retribution. Yeah, they're going to
Yeah.
get theirs for what they did, or karma will get them. But the thing that I've realized, even though, and the thing is, I know a lot of this stuff too, you may never see it. They'll get it, but you may never see it happen. So I think a lot of times we wait for, and this is me too. I hate to say this about myself, but I'm just human. A lot of us, wait to see, did they get theirs? Are they going to, all the things they did, is it going to come back to them? But you got to get past that.
Right, right, exactly. Because what I mentioned before about what can you set against all that resentment and victimization and stuff. Well, I mentioned greatest good, grace, and gratitude. And in some ways, it's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you really wanted greatest good, for instance, and you took it out of just like kind of a cute, trite concept and really embodied, like, where's the juice on greatest good, you'd realize that, wait a minute, if you have an intention of wanting somebody to suffer, even subtly, or you have an intention of
Even a little
them,
bit, you guys.
or not subtly, right? You want them to roast on the spit or something.
Oh my God.
Then then there's an opportunity. Okay. And the opportunity is whatever you're cooking up within yourself, that's what you get. So like the Buddha said, harboring resentment, harboring anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. The Buddha said that. The Buddha said that. People do that. So I look at it like this is a greater degree of responsibility. Just ask yourself what you want. So let me touch in from another angle. Okay. So we talked about karma because I want to get a little deeper into it. So karma means that you create your life and you're responsible for what? You.
Right.
It's more than a full-time job. I'm not responsible for what somebody else thinks about me or how they treat me or what they do or any of that stuff. Of course, I'll have great expectations for that. But basically, when you really tune into being the curator of your consciousness and you're choosing how you're going to be and who you're going to be, then there's this intense liberation because you realize, wow, if I really want the best for myself, then that means I absolutely want it for everybody else. So that means you can't have like some secret toxic thought about somebody wanting to be put on the rack and be really peaceful. I don't think it can happen. You have to be able to work it through. Now, granted, it's not necessarily easy.
Right.
One other thing that helps is to separate out the person's behavior from who they are, because oftentimes what people are suffering is the impact of people's unconscious and abusive behavior, which is, of course, hugely impactful. But who they are and how they are two different things as well. So it comes into compassion, which is something I think we'll talk about as well here. But ask yourself what you want. If there's still a part of you that wants the justice, first of all,
That's that, Charlie. I mean, I know, like I Oponopono people, and I send them love, and it works for a little while, and then it's like, but and you kind of still want that justice, in the back of your head. I think that's a lot of us. How do you get rid of that? And again, it's like you said, you have to separate. I like what you said. You have to separate the emotion or the act and the person. That
behavior in the person. That's right.
That kind of made some sense to me. So is that what we do?
Yeah. That's a definite part of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a definite part of it. So just think of it this way, like justice is not your job. If you make it your job, it's going to become very torturous. Justice is not your job. And if you really look around squarely in the world, and this, these might be fighting words with our spiritual community, but I'm willing to say it. This plane of 3 dimensions, where's their justice? I see it sometimes, but rarely. This is not, this physical reality is not predicated upon justice. That's a superimposition of humankind that we have this concept of justice. I love it too. I want it too. I'm all about it, really. But at the same time, I think there's a meta model here with the way nature operates. It has more to do with, at least with human beings, in terms of our volition and our will in what we're choosing to create. what we're choosing to invest our attention and our energy towards. And in that sense, we're devoted to things. Okay. Now, here's the ultimate crux, Nancy, is that
Okay.
you and I have a very limited amount of time. We always think everybody else is going to die. No, we're all here for a certain amount of time, and then that's it. So the question becomes, are you going to get fulfilled? Are you going to blossom? Are you going to be empowered? Or are you going to take that precious life force and the precious time and devote it towards ideas of like, okay, justice has to be served. They're going to get theirs. I suggest asking yourself like how you want to be, and again, see what you can learn from it, but recognize that if somebody treated you that badly, let's use that example. So there was an experience of betrayal. If that happened, then what happened was there was a revealing aspect. There's
Yes.
a
Yeah, a revelation. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't
right.
know that person had it in them. Right.
Right. So that's a revelation. And there's always an obscuring aspect to Maya or illusion and a revelatory aspect. So that revelatory aspect is telling you that's the kind of person they've chosen to be. And that's the kind of
Yes.
behaviors they're going to demonstrate and express.
Yeah.
Does that sound like somebody that you want to cruise down the road with for the rest
There
of
you
the
go. We can talk about, we're going to talk about this more when we come back.
Yeah.
We've got one more segment here with Charley Castex. This is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity, and we'll be right back. Hi, this is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity. I'm here today with Charley Castex. We're having a wonderful conversation. Charley, you're really helping me, and I know you're helping the audience here because you're just bringing forward a lot of points that really help. This is real life. I mean, people have things happen. Even I have things happen, and you're just like, what in the world? And when somebody betrays you and you don't expect it, it's just like, wow, it's like a train wreck, you're just like, what in the world? And I do agree with you. Then you realize who that person is and you're like, no, I don't want anything to do with that person. But it's the wound that you have to try to get past, or you have to get past. Otherwise, you carry it with you. And like you say, it affects you. So you have a choice. You can either be the victim or you can say, okay, I'm going to release this. And every time it comes into your head, go move with that emotion. I'm just going with what you said. And then you move with that emotion and release it and realize that revenge is not your job. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Let me add a little bit, which is,
okay,
think of it like romancing it. So wherever you're placing attention and focus is where your prana and your life force gets channeled.
Sure.
So let's remember that there's a difference between processing an emotion and working through it and cleaving to it, attaching to it, right? And what happens is people get in that loop where they suffer it. They think they're processing, or they think like, if I'm working on all this stuff, and it's like, well, if it's really working, you shouldn't have to keep working on it.
I agree.
Yeah, at least indefinitely.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's really on the right track. Realize that you're responsible for you and your state of being, and that becomes even more precious to you when you realize, wow, if I allow things and people and circumstances to just indiscriminately take my attention and my power, that would mean potentially, hypothetically, that person is not in their power. You see? So yeah, so we can't be responsible for other people's actions. We can be wounded and impacted in all of this. But here's the question. It's like, how kind can you be towards yourself? How compassionate can you be towards yourself? If you're super compassionate with yourself and you find a way to do that, you won't keep pouring salt in the wound. And it's really
you won't want to hurt yourself. You won't keep doing it. So once you change your mindset, I'm listening and trying to figure this out for everybody. But so as you change your mindset to be, to look at it differently, to come from a more loving space, I guess.
Well, with yourself. Yeah. With yourself.
With yourself, not so much with the person, but when you love yourself enough, then you don't want to carry it with you anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, in a sense, because you won't want to abuse yourself. Again, like you're either going to champion yourself and empower yourself or not, right?
Right.
If you're being really loving to yourself, you're going to say, why the hell would I keep raking myself over these same coals? Like what is the point of that? Why would I keep suffering something that's already done? And So one of the best definitions I've ever heard was a mentor of mine was asked, so let's see, so how can I be happy? And it was one of the best responses I've ever heard. And it is a crack up, but think about this. He said, quit being unhappy. So it's not that different. And I know it sounds a little backhanded, but it's true. It's not that different with being wounded. You have to decide, is this going to define me? Is this something that I want to integrate as like an identity that I've been betrayed? Or do I just look at it as, a significant event, and I don't have any agency over what happened, but I have every ounce of empowerment and agency over what I alchemically make of that. Because if you take like 50 pounds of manure and throw it at a mango tree, the mango tree doesn't get insulted, right? It doesn't. It actually takes all that crap and alchemically transforms it into fruit in life. So as human beings, we have that ability. If a flower is crushed, it lets out a fragrance. We have to become like that, and it takes it takes great volition to come to that place, because you really have to ask yourself, do I want to be happy and free and inspired and empowered and remember what this is all about? Or am I going to allow this to steal my time and my energy and my focus?
I love that.
Choice.
Yeah, it is a choice. It's a choice.
Powerful choice. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
So it's a gift to be given that choice, because then you can get clear on what you're really wanting. So when I do like sessions and mentor people spiritually, that's a big part of it, is to say, okay, let's get clear on what your desires are and your values and your dreams, and get all of those aligned, because oftentimes people have them going in different directions, and there needs to be a symmetry between what you want and what you're putting your energy towards. Otherwise, you're at cross purposes.
I love that. So it's really important, especially, we're getting ready to go into 2022, that I always tell people to write down what they really want, what's really important to them, and focus on that. And that's really good advice, for all of us, because it's so easy with the way the world is to get off and all these different, and let these things, take your energy away, like you're talking about. And it's really taking back your power, isn't it?
It is. We have to realize, well, first of all, that we do have that power. A lot of times it's either given away or taken in that sense by default, because people don't recognize how powerful they are.
No.
That's the real juicy thing here, is you are you're more powerful than you ever realized. Now, if your thought is working against you and your emotions are working against you, if it's not properly leveraged, that's not going to do anything. It's like being in the garage, taking the car out of park and slamming the accelerator, putting it in drive, slamming the accelerator, hitting the wall. There has to be a proper leveraging so that our thought is working for us and not against us.
Right. So we have to change our mindset. We have to change it up. We have to make a decision within ourselves, whether, people have wronged us in any way. And this happens to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, I'm not alone on this, you guys. It happens to a lot of us.
Definitely
and some people hold on to it and never get over it. And I've seen that. I've seen people have things happen and they get cancer, or they get, leukemia or whatever. I've seen that happen in my own family. And so I'm really glad we're talking about this.
Great.
Because this is something that, it's not just, everybody has this. And I have to say, I believe that we come down here to learn. And this is one of our lessons. This is a tough lesson, to learn to have our own power and to not let outside influences and other people affect us energetically, so that we can prosper. What do you talk about that for a minute?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, that speaks to my heart, because I look at it like, that is the crux of the matter, is your attention, basically attention with the the AT gives it away. It's focused towards an external target. And so then you've got intention, which is an internal command, the IN. Now, if I get really artful with my intention, which sets the coordinate for where every thought's going to go, where every emotion's going to go, where my feet are going to take me, all of that is set by the intention. But then if I match it with a very artful and very conscious usage of my attention towards something,
right,
then you become very informed that it's a tremendous responsibility to own your power. In fact, the other spiritual jumpstart is that the third one I wanted to share today is that, owning power comes through claiming the responsibility connected to that power. We own our power by claiming the responsibility. So our power is that we are incredible as humans. We can heal or we can hurt. So if you claim the responsibility of understanding that both are possible within you, it's not just light, you can damage or you can heal, then you're more clear on, yes, I have to take responsibility for where my headspace is and where my heart is, and start cleaning house, and really, let's put it this way. Most people put more attention and more nurturance towards their cat and dog than they do themselves, and sometimes more towards their car or their computer with the maintenance of that than themselves. So you're the greatest supercomputer, especially your brain.
Right.
Yeah, you got to get to the point where you realize you are really powerful. So the question is how to maintain and sustain that level of power. And I don't believe we can be powerful if we entertain disempowered thoughts and emotions all the time. The disempowered thoughts, disempowered feelings, it adds up to a real crap diet energetically, So you square off with it and you go, yeah, this is a waste product of my experience. Let me recycle it and let me alchemically transform it. And that's where you get a little deeper into the work, but we're touching on the bones of it today.
Yeah.
But I guarantee if that's what you want is to transform, and what you want is to be healed and empowered, that's what you'll get. But it has to be 100%. Otherwise, you can't say you want it, but your energy and your emotion is going in the other direction.
That is so well said. Thank you, Charlie. I really appreciate this.
Pleasure.
I'm so glad you came on today. Our hour went by really, really quick.
It does go really fast. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Absolute pleasure.
Tell the audience again how to get in touch with you. You're just such a wealth of information. And I know that people may want to get in touch with you to work with you. How do they find you again? Yes.
Great, Nancy. Sure. CharleyCastex.com. CharleyCastex.com is their site, and we've got the mentorship program on there and the spiritual empowerment sessions, and my book, Expand Your Spiritual Bandwidth, is in there too, which is a series of strategies that speak to all of this, of how do we connect the dots with syncing the spirit, mind, and body in a tangible, practical way.
Yeah. Well,
you've enjoyed my book. I think you've appreciated the humor in it too, if I remember.
I loved your book, and we've had you on for it. Yeah, you guys, you got to check that out too. Well, we got to get out of here for today, and I thank you again. And you've helped me, and you've helped the audience, and God bless. Hopefully you'll come back and see us again.
Absolutely, Nancy. Thanks for having me.
Okay. And you guys,
beautiful.
You're welcome.
Take care.
You're welcome. And if you guys want a psychic reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com, click on the book button, and you can book your date and time with me. Again, thanks again, Charlie. You guys, this is Nancy Yearout. This is Highroad to Humanity, and we will see you next time. Everybody take care and God bless.
Connect the dots and keep the motion. Can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hey, you guys, join me next week on The High Road for more stories filled with wisdom, love, and hope for our future. Have a fabulous week, and know that by staying on the high road, you will make it to your destination. Visit my website, nancyyearout.com, where you can book a private session to learn how to tap into your own abilities. And check out my YouTube channel. It's Nancy Yearout's High Road to Humanity.
You can achieve your goal.